Tonight I'm going to share a story with you. Months and months ago, we gathered together as a staff. We were sitting in a room and we were talking about this upcoming year, the year that we're in. We were chatting and talking about our major events. It's something we try to do often, and we plan and pray and think and create and come up with ideas. And many of you know that this is our 40th anniversary as a church. It's also our 5th anniversary of One Sisterhood. So we sat in that room and we began to talk about what we wanted to do to honor those incredible milestones. And I believe that those kind of moments or milestones are significant. They offer us the chance to pause and to reflect, to come to a point of a conscious recognition of where we have been and where we are going. You see, it's in moments like these that we stop and we pay attention and we look and we recognize the magnificence of where God has brought us as a community. So as we sat and we talked about the obvious highlights and the desires of what we wanted to honor and where we want to go for the next 40 years or the next 5 years for One Sisterhood, a theme was born. It was called Let the Future Begin. Moments later, as everyone was talking, a thought began to stir in my spirit, and it was just this phrase, a glorious anticipation. And my natural mind kind of led me to the belief that it was a theme that aligned with the idea of let the future begin, that we should have a glorious anticipation of the future, of where God was taking us. And while that is true, little did I know that one afternoon this summer I would be sitting in my office at our school. And I've had few of these moments in my life, but this was one of them. It was almost as if I had closed the door and I was going to do some work on my computer, and all of a sudden the room became awfully quiet, and it was like as if God came into a moment and he began to lead my thoughts down a particular pathway. And that afternoon, in a span of about 35 minutes, God revealed to me the true intention of the theme of glorious anticipation. You see, that afternoon I sat in the chair of a woman so many of you know and so many of you have loved. And as I sat there, I began to think of my mom's incredible life. Her story, as you know it, began in 1977. That's when she was 27 years old. And at the age of 27, she set out on an adventure. And it was an adventure that would eventually become known as Abundant Living Faith Center. Along the way, the story enveloped the lives of hundreds and then thousands of people. And in the strength of who she was, her power to reach a magnitude was equally matched by her moments with just one. And even as her daughter, I had a front row seat to the journey as I knew it. So much of that journey lied in the story of Abundant Living Faith Center, the story that most of you have heard or been a part of. And that story was the idea to begin a church. It was the fight to pioneer its beginning and the search to discover what this church should be. It was a choice to stand as a woman with really no model to follow. And the glory of watching handfuls and hundreds and later thousands surrender their hearts to the love and the acceptance of God's grace. Her story was the founding of a Christian education legacy and the building of a home. and the championing of two children to embrace a love and a calling. And on that afternoon, my thoughts began to go and began to trail a life that I loved very dearly, and I remembered her as I always did. I remembered her as beautiful, as a strong and courageous and capable woman. I remembered her as a champion of grace and a voice against the rejection that religion offered so many before. I remembered her as a compassionate lover of people and a fighter for the future and for our legacies. And I remembered her as a mom and a wife and a pastor and a friend. And that day I remembered her as I always do, but God began to direct me to a different part of her story, to the beginning of her story. Some of you are here tonight who actually knew my mom very well. And if you did know her very well, then you knew that she was not a fan of the past at all, especially hers. She was always ready to move on to the bigger and the better. I remember when she turned 60, she practically threatened us, right? Don't you dare pull out those old photos. And don't you dare tell anyone I'm 60. Needless to say, she rarely talked about her beginnings because she was a future thinker. She was a forward thinker. She was always ready for something bigger and better. And I believe at times it's spectacular to visit the past and to interpret the past in light of where we now stand, knowing what we know now and in light of where you are going. My mom, she was glamorous. She was beautiful. I mean, she took being put together to a whole other level. I was telling one of the pastors the other day that I remember when working out clothes kind of became popular. And I was in the house one day and she was coming down the stairs, and I'll never forget, I was gonna go to Target and I was in my workout clothes and I had no makeup in my hair and a ponytail, and she looked at me and she said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to Target, Mom." And she literally looked at me up and down and she went, "Oh." My mom was extra, as they say. As I thought of her, that afternoon at the school, I began to think of her as a young girl. If I could somehow paint a picture of her beginning for you, if you could only know and understand what her beginning was really like. You see, she was born in a town called Raton, New Mexico. It's a town of about 8,000 people. I think it's even less now, but at the time that she lived there, it had about 8,000 people. I want you to get a picture that the town that my mom grew up in was smaller than the church that she would eventually pastor. She was born to two Lebanese parents, one American born, and one who was literally born in Lebanon and came to the States as a teenager. Her mom was a kind and loving woman who truly found her entire purpose and her passion in my mother, and her father was a smart and successful businessman. But he had a love for Vegas and a love for work, and honestly speaking, not a whole lot of interest in a deep relationship with my mom. He always took care of her. But my mom's real family was her mother. And over the years, as I grew up, I spent a few days in Raton. And to say that it was hard to imagine the woman that I knew living there is an understatement. You know, she was like a big lights girl and makeup and shopping, and she owned a stage like few could. That kind of stuff just didn't exist in Raton. Honestly, not much exists in Raton. And my mom's story, as God kind of directed my thoughts, began at about the age of 3. At 3 years old, she started taking ballet. My mom would grow to adore ballet, but the truth is that her mom put her in ballet because it was like the only thing for her to do in Raton. But at a very young age, she began to fall in love with the stage. I remember going with her to her 30th high school reunion. I can't quite figure out what convinced her to go, because those were usually the kind of things that she ignored. But she went, and she took us with her. And as we sat in the hotel that her father had built and designed, and we sat around and I listened to the stories of her friends as they all talked, her high school boyfriend came and sat across from me. And he had known her whole life. And he said, "Shannon, I want you to know, this is who your mother was. This is who she always was. She was always extra." Even at 5 years old. I think that what he was trying to say was there was something different about her. She was special in some way, or maybe it was the fancy dresses that she always wore, the way that she always combed her hair. I don't know. She lived in that town for most of her childhood. Her father owned hotels there. And he was inventive. He was what we would call today an entrepreneur. There's a type of Holiday Inn, and some of my Texas friends from Odessa and Midland will know it. It's the type of Holiday Inn where in the middle of the hotel all the rooms are in a square that go around, and in the middle is a pool and a play area with pool tables and stuff like that. And they were really popular for a while. Her father built the first one of its kind. He kind of invented the concept. And she grew up in that hotel or hospitality life and restaurants and those kind of things. And at times she even lived in hotels. When we went for her 30th high school reunion, she drove my brother and I to see the country club that her dad had actually, I guess, put together with his friends. And the country club was a trailer. Literally. I'll never forget that night after we toured the entire town, which took about 5 minutes. We said, let's go to Dairy Queen, because Dairy Queen is the only thing in Raton. And believe it or not, it took us about 45 minutes to get an ice cream, because every person in Raton was at Dairy Queen. My mom spent her summers in Albuquerque, New Mexico. That's where her mom's family was. Her mom came from a big family, lots of brothers and sisters, and she had lots and lots of cousins who she loved. And so in the summer, she would go there, and they would spend a lot of time there. She was close to them. And you may be thinking, why am I sharing these things with you? It's because I want to paint a picture of a woman whose story is probably not as you assumed. You see, her beginnings were nothing like where she ended up. She was not raised in religion. I asked her one time what church or what she was when she was growing up, and she looked at me and said, well, we were just kind of a little bit of everything, or maybe nothing at all. And she would actually come to know Jesus as a college student at the University of Texas at El Paso at a Campus Crusade for Christ meeting. It was she who would share the word with my dad, and together they would pioneer a great faith and a great house in El Paso. But for a moment, I just want to walk you down a path. What is the story of your life? If someone were to stand here and pay tribute to you, what would they say? More than likely, you would think of the highlights or the big moments like the marriage and the kids and the graduations or that one big promotion. But tonight I want to focus your attention somewhere else. What is your beginning? If you've got everyone here has got a Bible tonight. Amen. In Jeremiah 1 verse 5, and I'm reading out of the Message Bible, which is the Bible that I gave you. It says, "Before I shaped you in the womb, I knew all about you. Before you saw the light of day, I had holy plans for you." You see, before you were even formed in your mother's womb, he had a plan for you, a holy plan. As God began to just think of you before he spoke you into existence, he literally began to design you and craft you. He knew all about you. And you see, he didn't stop with your makeup. He didn't say, "Let me make her good and then see what she does with it." He said, "I'm going to form her in my image and it's going to be good. And then I'm going to establish her with a holy plan in mind." And some of you, as I say that, your natural thoughts begin to tell you, "Wait a second, Shannon, you don't understand the place that I come from." And I would just ask you to listen for a moment, to watch and see as we walk this story. You see, I can honestly say that I think my mom always viewed the beginning of her calling as the moment that she accepted Jesus at the UTEP campus. She saw that as the moment that her calling began, and she began to walk a path with him. But you see, if I read Jeremiah 1 verse 5 and I apply this verse to who she was, then I must look to her true beginning. You see, before God put her in her mother's womb, before he even spoke her into existence, as he began to craft her in his thinking, he formed her with the very intention of becoming the pastor that we knew. And as he planted her inside of her mother's womb, inside of her, he put all of the things that she needed to be who he designed her to be. An infant girl born in a town of 8,000 to two parents who literally did not know God at a time where churches like this did not even exist. When he spoke her into existence, in her creation was a love for the stage. In her creation was a boldness and a confidence in front of people, a beauty and a desire for excellence that had nothing to do with a life in Raton. But they were the very qualities that God would use to pioneer her calling. She once told me that for as long as she could remember, she knew she wanted a life outside of where she came from. My mom grew up and her biggest pursuit was ballet. And she pursued it until the day that she was accepted into her dream school in New York. She was so excited. She relished the opportunity. She was drawn to the idea of living in a city like New York. It was her chance for a new beginning. And when the time came to go, At the last minute, her dad walked in and announced that she couldn't go. And he told her that there was no way he was going to let her go live in a city like New York when all she had ever known was a town of 8,000. It was wise advice, but nevertheless, it was very disappointing. And he told her that she had to go somewhere else first. He said, look, you can go to New York eventually, but in the meantime, you've got two choices. You can either go to Albuquerque or you can go to El Paso. And the logical choice would have been for her to go to Albuquerque, where her family was from, but she chose El Paso, and the only reason she chose it was because there was a woman named Miss Hoyser who was a ballet teacher at UTEP. She was well respected, and my mom's teacher in Raton knew who she was, and so she spoke highly of her. And so it was the teacher that was at UTEP that caused my mom to choose El Paso. My mom, I think I can comfortably say, was not used to not getting her way. Right? Those of you who knew her know how well that went over. She could be a bit of a bulldog. She came to El Paso with one thought in mind. That thought was leaving. She came here disappointed, let down, hurt, angry. She had worked really, really hard to get to where she wanted to go. And just like that, her dad had come in and abruptly altered her plan. But little did she know. You see, I believe that from the moment God formed my mother, he was working and moving. He was adjusting and aligning and realigning, and all of it was with one intention, and that was to get her here to El Paso to begin to pioneer a message of faith and abundance in God. You see, we often focus on the idea that we are made in the image of God, that he knows the numbers of hairs on our head, but do we really talk about or think about the magnitude of who he is in our life, that his hand is in the smallest of details, that he is constantly working and moving, that he is constantly drawing us to who he wants us to be. Not just once we decide to say yes to him. He is working and drawing and pursuing us even before we make him the Lord of our life, even before we say, I'll have a relationship with you. He is always involved in the intricacies of our life. You see, his hand is woven into each and every day. He is working in each and every moment. That afternoon, as I sat in the school, I began to think about the moment that my mom's spirit left earth and she entered heaven. And I imagined that in that moment that her eyes were opened and the magnitude of the truth of what her life was shown to her. And in that moment, answers were revealed to her and the unknowns were made known, and they all made perfect sense. You see, I imagine that right then that God said, oh, Rochelle, now you see. I didn't just meet you as a college girl in El Paso, Texas. I was there from your formation to your end, even when you could not comprehend. Even when you did not know me and you did not recognize me, even when you thought you were living for you. Even at the times that you thought I had let you down, I was there. I was present. I was involved. You see, Rochelle, I was pursuing you. I was making a way for you. When I thought to create you, I didn't just think, oh, I'll make a little Lebanese girl and I'll give her to some random couple in Raton, New Mexico, and then I'll sit back and see what happens. You see, I made you in my image and I set you in your mother's womb. And when I did that, it was with a holy plan, which I then set in motion. I imagine that when she stood before Jesus, that he told her, oh, Rochelle, look and see. You see, I chose your mother because I knew she would love you so passionately that nothing would ever stop her from making your dreams come true. I knew that she would believe that anything that you wanted to do, anything you wanted to be could actually come true. I knew that she would raise you to believe that whatever you wanted to make happen, that you could do it. I knew that she would teach you to love and to do it fiercely. I imagine that on the day that she stood before Jesus, that he said, look, Rochelle, I chose your father. He wasn't perfect, but I gave you to him because from him you would learn to pioneer. From him you would learn to blaze a trail that had never before been traveled. From him, you would learn to take a risk for something that you believed in. I believe that on that moment when she stood before Jesus, that he said, I gave you to your father because it was from him that you would learn how to take an idea and how to build something from the ground up. You see, I needed you to be an entrepreneur of faith. I needed you to be a builder of churches. I needed for you to be a trailblazer for women to have a voice, to believe that they could be smart, that they could be called, that they could be used. I imagine he said, I chose your father because through him, you would have a connection to an aunt in El Paso, Texas. I imagine that he said to her, Rochelle, I used ballet. It may seem insignificant to you, but I used it because it was the only thing available in Raton. And as you know, I can use anything and I can use anyone. You see now, Rochelle, you may have thought that ballet was your dream. You thought it was your future, but I was just using it as a tool to refine the talents and the abilities that I created you with. You see, Rochelle, I used ballet to get you into position for the holy plan that I had for you. I used ballet to develop your strength and your understanding of excellence and to give you the confidence to stand alone. You see, I needed you to learn. I needed you to learn that skill develops over time. That practice makes us better, and that refining our skill requires discipline, and that if you are faithful, if you will put the work in, if you will commit yourself to something, that you will get better and better, and the opportunities will begin to grow. I imagine that Jesus said to her, look, you were 3 years old, but you see, I knew the future. I had the holy plan in mind. I could see what you could not yet understand. I needed ballet to serve as a thread. I made sure you knew of a ballet teacher that was in El Paso, Texas, at the university there, and I used her because I needed to get you to El Paso because that was your real home. I imagine that maybe Jesus told her, could I have used a girl from El Paso? Of course I could. But you see, I needed you. I chose you. I needed a woman, a fierce woman who was totally unaccustomed to being told no, who could rise as a voice of freedom for other women, who would be willing to stand up as a voice of hope. Along the way, things happened. There were people who failed to participate the way that I intended them to. But you see, Rochelle, I just readjusted. I knew that if I realigned the plan, that if I could just get you to El Paso, I could cross your path with a man who would be captured by your beauty. A man who had grown bitter against religion. You see, Rochelle, I never gave up. I never quit. I never stopped working. Why? Because I knew what was in you. I knew it before you were in your mother's womb. I knew it as when you were a young girl in Raton. I knew it when you fell in love with ballet, and I put you there for a reason, because I knew what I had formed you to be. I knew what I had created you to be, and I knew that your destiny lied in El Paso, Texas. And so from the moment of your conception, my anticipation for your life was a fulfilled destiny of all of the things that I had put inside of you. I imagine that God said to her, my hopes and my dreams were instilled in your makeup. They were there all along. My contribution to the plan was totally complete, and no matter what I had to do, no matter what or who I had to align or realign, no matter what or who I had to use, I never stopped pursuing you. I never stopped pulling you towards your destiny. You see, ladies, New York was never the plan. Ballet was merely a tool. Raton was nothing more than a place of preparation. The idea of being a school teacher was simply a seed for Faith Christian Academy. I can't imagine my mom's response when her eyes were open and she could see clearly all the way from the beginning to the end, the moment that it all made sense, when she understood that the no's were not meant to disappoint or let down, when God said, don't you see, Rochelle, it was me. I was getting you to where I needed you to be. I was investing and I was working. I was moving. I was calling. I was pulling. I had to close the door that would bring Charles back to El Paso. I had to put that teacher in place at UTEP. You see, I was making a way, and I did it all, Rochelle, all of it with absolutely no guarantee, that with no certainty did I know that you would actually get to the moment, and that when you encountered it, that you would say yes. You see, ladies, the story of my mom's beginning may seem like nothing more than a young girl growing up in a small town. But in truth, it is a beacon of hope for each and every one of us. You see, she had no control of where she started. She had no control of where she came from, but God was the master of her creation, and he never, ever stopped working on her behalf. And just like many of you, the reality of your life appears to be the direct result of things you have no control over. But ladies, you must understand that even when you do not know, even when you cannot see, even in the most insignificant moment, God is working on your behalf. He is bringing the pieces into place to get you to where he needs you to be. There's this amazing verse in the Message Bible. It's in verse John 3, chapters 1 and 2, and it says, "What marvelous love the Father has extended to us. Just look at it. We're called children of God. That's who we really are. But that's also why the world doesn't recognize us or take us seriously, because the world has no idea who he is or what he's up to." I imagine what people thought of my mom and the things that she did and the ways that she was, the prissy and sometimes overdressed and at moments a bit spoiled as a child, and always the last to be picked for every single sports team. I imagine what her parents thought when she told them she was going to marry a man from El Paso, Texas, who was not Lebanese, and that she was going to go work in the ministry. I can very vividly see her dad, like a scene from the Big Fat Greek Wedding, saying, "Ministry? What is a ministry? That is, no. I imagine what people thought when she started walking through the airports and telling people about Jesus. The truth is that there were a lot of opinions about her, opinions of people who, frankly speaking, they didn't recognize who she really was. They were opinions of people who didn't take her seriously because they didn't know her creator. They couldn't understand what her creator was up to. I sort of think that she probably didn't even know or recognize. But then there was a moment when she discovered, a moment when she fully realized that she was a daughter of the Most High. And when she did, she didn't hesitate. She didn't put a lid on who she was or what she was supposed to become. I imagine that maybe she thought, who knows what God is up to? Ladies, where you sit in this very moment, the hurts and the disappointments, the unanswered questions, the things you can't escape, the people and the issues that you believe are holding you back. Could you just suppose with me for a moment that quite possibly God is bigger? Quite possibly he actually has a plan, and who knows where you'll end up. Isaiah 55:11 in the Message Bible says, "So will the words that come out of my mouth not come back empty-handed. They'll do the work that I sent them to do. They'll complete the assignment that I gave him. You see, I was raised to believe that God's word is truth, and his word tells me that he formed me. His word tells me that he created me. His word tells me that when he did it with a plan and a purpose. His word tells me that when he placed me in my mother's womb, that there was a holy plan that went along with it. His word also tells me that it cannot abandon that plan, and he cannot fail to bring it to pass. Now make no mistake, the same word also tells me that you and I are creatures of our own free will. Now what does that mean? That means that God cannot force his will on you or anyone else. He cannot force you to align with his holy plan. You see, along the way, you have to choose his creation. You have to choose his plan. You have to choose his design. You will definitely make mistakes, and you will most definitely be surrounded by others that make mistakes, and at times you may even pay the price for some of the mistakes of the others that surround you. But those mistakes, ladies, cannot keep you from where he wants you to go if you will just decide that you're gonna go. You see, ladies, God has this spectacular ability. He has the ability to see things not as they are, but as they are meant to be. You see, when he looked at Moses, he didn't see an abandoned boy in a river. He looked at Moses and he saw a deliverer. When he looked at David, he didn't see a rejected shepherd boy. When he looked at David, Jesus saw a king. When he looked at Abraham, he didn't see a man who was desperate for a child. He saw a faith that was bold enough to believe in the coming of our Savior. He saw a man who was strong enough in faith to be the father of the nations. When he looked at Esther, he didn't see an orphan. He saw a beauty. He saw a pillar of strength. He saw a woman who would answer the call and who would say yes. You see, when he looked at Rochelle Nieman, he didn't see a ballet dancer. He saw a teacher. He saw a believer. He saw a builder. He saw a woman whose life would birth a holy house. He saw a woman that would build a place that would become a gateway for her daughter and for her daughter's daughters and for women from all over, from Mexico and California and Texas and Idaho and New Mexico. You see, ladies, God sees you not as you are, but as he intends for you to be. He looks at your situation. He looks at where you're standing, not as it is, but where it is meant to be. He looks at you and he sees your end, not just your beginning. You see, ladies, he is working. He is investing. He is aligning, and he realigns, he adjusts and he moves things. He is paving the way for you. He is opening doors for you, and he will continue to do so. You see, the God who spoke you into existence will pursue you all the days of your life, and he does it with all the hope that he placed in you. He does it with just one simple desire, that you will choose him. He pursues you with a hope that you will just say yes. That you will just say yes to who he wants you to be. And in the magnificence of the God we serve, he works and he works and he pursues and he aligns and he calls and he opens doors and he keeps doing it and doing it and doing it, and he does it all with no guarantee, because you see, you have a free will and you have to choose, but he loves you so much. He has so much expectation of what you could be, of who you could help, of the life that you could build, that he just keeps coming after you. He just keeps moving things towards you. He just keeps calling you forward, because all he desires is for you to say yes to who he wants you to be. If you'll open your Bibles with me to John chapter 11. There's this incredible story, and pretty much everyone here, I'm sure, knows it. It's the story of Lazarus. Mary and Martha have sent word to Lazarus that, Mary and Martha have sent word to Jesus that Lazarus is ill. And so Jesus is aware that he's sick, and we understand from the story that Jesus was close to Mary, he was close to Martha, he was close to Lazarus. He cared deeply for them. But he was busy. And he waits 4 days before he goes to where Lazarus is. I'm going to begin reading in verse 14. It says, then Jesus, he's responding back to his disciples. The disciples have told him that Lazarus is asleep. And Jesus became explicit, and he says, Lazarus died. And I am glad for your sakes that I wasn't there. You're about to be given new grounds for believing. Now let's go to him. We skip down to verse 17. It says, when Jesus finally got there, he found Lazarus already 4 days dead. Bethany was near Jerusalem, only a couple of miles away, and many of the Jews were visiting Mary and Martha. They were there because they felt bad for them. Martha heard that Jesus was coming, and so she went out to meet him. Verse 21, it says, Martha said to Jesus, Martha, Master, if you'd been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Even now, I know that whatever you ask God, he will give you. Jesus said, your brother will be raised up. And Martha replied, I know that he will be raised up in the resurrection at the end of time. And Jesus said, you don't have to wait for the end. I am, right now, resurrection and life. We go down in the story to verse 28, and it says, after saying this, she went to her sister Mary and whispered in her ear, the teacher is here, and he's asking for you. The moment Mary heard that, she jumped up and she ran out to him, and Jesus had not yet entered the town, but was still at the place where Martha had met her. When her sympathizing friends saw Mary run off, they followed her, thinking that she was on her way to the tomb to weep. Mary came to where Jesus was waiting and fell at his feet, saying, Master, if only you had been here. We know how the story goes, and Jesus saw her crying, and he finally looks at her and says, "Where did you put him?" Others among them, it says, the Jews said, "Look how deeply Jesus loved him," because Jesus began to weep. Others among them said, "Well, if he loved him so much, why didn't he do something to keep him from dying?" There's an interesting thing that we see here in this story. You see, as we begin to walk out God's holy plan for our lives, there are moments along the way where things don't work out as we think that they should work out. And when that happens, two voices begin to rise in our thoughts. There's the voice that says, "If only something was different." Martha said, "If only you had come, Master." Mary said, "If only you had come, Master." There are some of you that have been listening to me tonight, and as I speak, you hear the story of what God began to do in my mom's life, and you want to believe, but you're living in the reality of the if onlys. You look at your life and you go, "Well, if only I had been born to someone else. If only I didn't live in El Paso. If only my dad hadn't made that mistake. If only my husband was nicer. If only I had had the chance to go to college. If only I could get the attention of someone else. If only." And then there are some of you that have encountered a moment in this walk of your holy plan as you journey forward where you have felt so much disappointment. And in that disappointment, the voice of the enemy has risen up in your thoughts that says to you, "If he loves you so much, then why?" We see that in this story. We see the voices around Martha and Mary who say to them, "Well, if he loved Lazarus so much, why didn't he do something to keep him from dying?" We see the enemy begin to speak to Martha and Mary and say, "It's too late for you. There was a moment that it could have been different, but if only it had worked out, if only Jesus had come." And it's important that when those voices begin to rise up in your life, that you remind yourself that God's hand is in the very details, that he doesn't look at just one moment, that he views your life from the beginning to the end. He knows what you do not know. You see, others among them said, "Well, if he loved him so much, why didn't he do something to keep him from dying? After all, this was the guy who opened the eyes of the blind man." We read down in the story, the sister of the dead man, Martha, said, "Master, if only you had come sooner." You see, Jesus had just told her, "Remove the stone. Remove the stone." She tells him, "Master, but if you had come sooner, that might have worked, but now it stinks." There's a really bad stench. You see, he's not just a little bit dead. He's really dead. He's been dead for 4 days. Jesus looks at her and he says, "Didn't I tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" That word glory there means the power and the goodness of God. You see, along this journey, the enemy will try to stop you from believing. He wants you to question. He wants you to doubt. He wants you to buy into the excuses of the stuff that surrounds you. He tries to give you justification for why you are where you are, for why you aren't who you desire to be. The voice of the enemy will tell you that if you had parents like that girl, if only you had had the opportunities that she had, if only your husband was not so angry and bitter, if only someone would just notice you or give you a chance. The voice of the enemy likes to focus us on the if-onlys. The voice of the enemy likes to tell us that he doesn't really love us the way that the Bible says he loves us. Because if he loved us that much, then these things wouldn't have happened. Ladies, make no mistake tonight. The circumstances that surround you, the barriers you are facing, the voices of negativity that you hear, the lack and the disappointment, the pain, none of it overrides the holy plan that God has for you, the holy plan that he put into your makeup. You see, I believe that if you will just believe, nothing can stop the goodness and the power of what God desires to you. If you will just believe. You see, there are women here tonight. You have dreams that have died. You have potential that is dormant. You live with the reality that there is little to no point to your existence. And frankly speaking, I believe that God brought you here for one reason: to give you a new story, to tell you, here's some new ground for believing. You see, I believe that God is saying to you, ladies, look, go ahead, take away the stone. Remove it. He is saying to one sisterhood, look, I dare you. I dare you to move the stone. I dare you to come out. I dare you to believe. I dare you to believe that you have a holy plan for your life. And I brought you here tonight to ask you, will you choose to see the glory of your God? Will you choose to believe that he has been with you from the beginning, that he is with you right now, and that he is already in your future, and he is drawing you towards it? Will you dare to rise up and have a faith for what you may not know or understand or even comprehend? Will you dare to believe that your creation is not by accident, that it is magnificent, that he is working on your behalf, that he is pursuing you, that he is calling you? And when you dare to believe, will you say yes when the moment comes? Will you say yes when God brings it all into alignment? Will you say yes to the choice to be the woman that he created you to be. And then will you get up and year after year and child after child and moment after moment and battle after battle and victory after victory and working after working and believing after believing, will you get up and will you say yes again and again and again and again and again and again until he calls you to the calling, to the magnificence of who he designed you to be? This is the story of God's glorious anticipation of you. He stands with a heart full of joy. He is waiting for you to quit asking, what if only. If you loved me so much, God, why did this happen? He is waiting for you to let those things go to rest. He is waiting for you to rise up and say, my God, wherever you are taking me, my God, wherever you want me to go, my God, I don't understand, but I trust, I believe, I say yes. Don't leave. You see, tonight, my prayer is that in understanding the majesty of a life that said yes, and in seeing the magnitude of what God can do, that your heart will shout yes. That tonight your heart will come alive with a limitless hope. A hope that screams. If Rochelle Nieman could answer the call, then so will I. If Rochelle Nieman could choose to be, then so will I. If Rochelle Nieman could move past the days of her small beginning, then so will I. If Rochelle Nieman could say yes, then so will I.